Hello, I'm Dr. Nolan Rollins, and I'm part of your research team from Delaware State University. I'm excited to bring you some analysis that Dr. Brian Friel and Dr. Adam Borovich worked on. So we, in total, had 751 individuals respond to our survey. We had a number of incomplete records and some missing data. So we eliminated those, and we are bringing you today the results of the 513 respondents. Our statistician worked with some really interesting tools and techniques that I won't get into this video, but we will get to a summary of the data. So our data was gathered again from our survey, where we asked a number of questions regarding to individuals' perceptions of things like welcoming in the field, opportunities for leadership, etc. So we started off our analysis by looking at the level of agreement. And here you see this displays the level of agreement on a Likert scale. In the dark blue, blue or green, we have strong agreement. So if you see our first item, question 10 was 90% agreement, all the way down to 49, which was our, we could say, disagreement. Now, we wanted to group these things in questions, and we were able to do this with this principal access factor. And what this means is how well the question is related to a topic. So we see our 4 topics here: equal opportunity for leadership, equal opportunity for written exam, welcoming diversity, and some organizational factors. And there were 4 questions that didn't quite fit this model, and I'll be talking about them later. Okay, also, when we talk about things like opportunities for leadership, we want to recognize what perspective they're coming from. So whether they are in a rural region, the age, the gender, race, highest degree of education, these things all matter. Now, when you look at the data, if you see 2 asterisks here, you can see that indicates a statistically significant difference in the perception. And we have that when we look at rural and urban communities. Another way to look at this too is 0 is the average level of agreement. So here you can see that for the first community served, in regards to exam opportunity, they were very agreeable, where with the urban community reported less opportunity to do well on the written exam. So that's how you look at that. Now, when we look at race, we see some really interesting things that is maybe illustrates the problem that we're trying to address. So the most common differences in perception were individuals identified as Black, and they identified less opportunities for leadership, less welcoming diversity from the organization. And when it comes to their opportunity to pass the exam, they also felt that they had less of an opportunity. And that's significant when compared to every other reported race. Some other things that came up really interesting. This was one of the questions that didn't quite fit our model. So we'll look at it in and of itself. Individuals identified as Black also indicated that a lack of opportunity with educational programs that lead to a national certification. Some gender things also came up, and males and females reported different perspectives in leadership opportunities and welcoming of diversity. You see, here we see males were generally agreeable on both categories, while women felt there's less welcoming of diversity and less opportunities for leadership. Here was another question that didn't quite fit the model, and it was regarding creating and maintaining a diverse workforce requires a diverse team in leadership positions. And the females felt quite strongly about this, and the males less so. So this is really interesting to me, that women reportedly wanted to see some representation in the leadership position. The males agreed with that as well, but not near to the extent as the females. We see when we think about region and highest degree rewarded in regards to both a welcoming factor here on the right and the exam opportunity factor score, we see some differences. We see the Midwest was more agreeable that the exam was a quality exam and reflected their ability. And then over here, we back to welcoming factor, we see differences were found in high school. It was pretty interesting that the high schoolers reported very welcoming, and this may be generational, this may be education. As they become more educated, it seems that the agreement goes down. So that was really interesting finding. Some conclusions. So when I talked about the level of agreement and I indicated that one thing got a 90, that thing was that everybody agreed on was a strong mentorship program can drastically impact retention. 90% agreement on that. What was interesting too, though, is the least agreed upon statement was there's a formal mentorship process at my organization that offers a comprehensive curriculum that is available for all new employees. So although leadership really matters in the way of retention and welcoming diversity, it did appear that a formalized objective process was lacking really across the board. Now, when we look back at our original question, I'll move my face, why are Black, Indigenous, people of color not entering the EMS workforce? Well, we saw that Black specifically and other racial groups report a significant different perception when it comes to the opportunities that are available in leadership, a welcoming environment of diversity, and some indicated the exam was problematic. And the exam was problematic because perhaps it does not really reflect somebody's understanding of the exam, that it reflects their ability to take an exam. And then also there were some disparities in the quality of education leading up to the national exam. Some other interesting things too is, although we initially really wanted to focus on diversity in terms of race and ethnicity, we found a lot of interesting things with gender discrepancy. So males and females had differences in perspective between leadership opportunities and welcoming factors. Females reported creating a diverse workforce was really important. And why this is important, why we're going to circle back to our why. Well, I got this article from, at the time, the president of the National Registrar, and it was really interesting that they looked at a description of pre-hospital services. And here, this study found that there was really an overrepresentation of white males. And this may or may not be a surprise to anybody, but the 85% of people in pre-hospital settings are white, which means if you live in the United States and you're white and you have an emergency, you're most vulnerable, you can count on somebody that looks like you, perhaps talks like you, is coming into your home or place where you're injured or need help, and they're helping you. If you're not white, that percentage drops dramatically. So that means that if you're not white, somebody comes into your house or comes wherever you are, where you're injured, where you're most vulnerable and need the help, and they don't talk like you, they don't look like you, and you are supposed to trust that individual to help you. So that's pretty powerful to me. Also, when we look at the amount of females entering the profession, that's also problematic. Problematic because they feel excluded. So the focus of this discussion in our paper that we're going to write, we're going to try to turn it to something that is readable for all ethnicities that feel represented, and also something that's not necessarily shaming. Because it's a perception issue. It's really a perception. It's not whether or not they are welcomed. It's do they feel welcome? Have they been made to feel that they're needed and necessary? And really, there's some irony to this. As I move my face again, get ready for my next thought. It's really interesting when you look at the history and you look. And thanks, Tom, for this recommendation for this book. The former president of the National Registry also alerted me to a place called the Freedom House, where it was a place in Pittsburgh where they initiated EMS services to community members that could not access hospitals at a rate which was helpful. And it was staffed by Black men, which, as our study showed, these Black men, all these years later, decades later, do not feel welcomed in a profession that they helped create. So, and this is not an exclusive thing to Pittsburgh. We also found literature to discuss it happened in New York and other cities, that the people that are most feel excluded, maybe they're not excluded, but they feel excluded from the EMS services. They're the ones that started it. So that's really our next steps. Is we're going to start writing a paper for publication that is going to share our process and the things that we've learned through the survey. So thank you.